The Royals' brutal stretch of games is finally over. So, what's next for Kansas City? We'll talk about it next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. If you are a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, well, I am based here in Kansas City. I work over at Sports Radio 810 WHB, do some hosting, co-hosting, and some producing. So I stay pretty busy on the day-to-day sports world. But when you come to this podcast, when you click on this link, you are going to get 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Now, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. I was just watching the NBA Finals. Of course, it was an absolute blowout. That didn't do so well for my bets for the entire series. I thought the series was going to go a little bit longer than 5 games. That's my fault, though. I should have never doubted Boston like that. But if I am going to doubt a team or root for a team or bet on a team, I'm going to do it over at FanDuel. We'll have more on them coming up a little bit later on in today's show. Again, questions and comments can be left to me on Twitter, or you can shoot them over to me on our YouTube channel. The Royals didn't have a game tonight, which gave us an opportunity to really do the episode whenever we wanted to, although what we will probably see throughout at least the first couple days of this week, some later episodes, not tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, depending on what my schedule looks like, but we got more West Coast baseball. The Royals playing very late into the evening and likely not wrapping up until past 11 o'clock Central Time here in Kansas City. I know it varies depending on where you're listening to this episode from. But off day today, and it really gave the Royals, I think, a chance to take a deep breath in and exhale. That's what I think this off day was meant for, because the Royals had, and I would have to go through everybody's schedule. I do not remember a stretch like this for a lot of teams out there. I don't keep tabs on everybody's schedule and who they play back to back to back, but I would love to do the advanced research and see which teams had to play 4 consecutive first-place opponents and have a stretch of games, nearly 20 of them long, like the Royals have had this season. Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows of getting out of this gauntlet at 7-12 and 5-7 over your last 12, because Minnesota has closed the gap and Boston has now closed the gap. The Twins are just a half game back of Kansas City, and Boston, after their win tonight in Toronto, are just 3 games back of Kansas City. However, I will say this. Nobody thought that the Royals were going to just run away with a playoff spot. There was always going to be competition, and they were going to have to fend off some opponents. But this is the time to do it now. This is the time to gain back a lot of the ground that you lost in this stretch of games. And I would probably say for a lot of teams out there, you put them through this stretch of games, they're not going to come out the other side playing exceptional baseball. There's too many good teams, too many good starters, a lot of tough environments you have to go into. To me, it was pretty fortunate the Royals got out of that gauntlet with 7 wins of their own and 5 wins against those first-place opponents they saw. I know the Yankees series was a near debacle, getting swept for the first time this year. They find a way to win 1. They find a way to win 1 in Los Angeles. And we said that on Friday, right? That if they could grab 1 in LA, I'm not going to celebrate a 2-5 week, but considering the opponents, I'll take 2-5. And now that that is over, now that that is in the past, like I said, you can take a deep breath in and you can exhale, because the Royals are still 9 games over 500. And though Minnesota has closed this gap, Boston has closed this gap, the Royals now have a stretch of 20-25 games of their own where they can build back some of that cushion, where they can go into the All-Star break with hopefully a 5, 6, 7 game lead of a playoff spot over the Red Sox, though they will get Boston at Fenway in the 3 games right before the All-Star break in Arlington. But they will see Oakland this week. Oakland's lost 10 in a row. They have gone back to where Oakland A's baseball was expected to be after their semi-impressive start, I should say. At one point in time back in early May or something, they were a game or two out of first place in the AL West, and their bullpen was phenomenal. Now they just don't have the pieces offensively or the rotation to really compete in their own division, which has been incredibly weak this year, but also just in the American League. So the Royals, you could argue, are maybe not catching Oakland at the best time, because if you've lost 10 in a row, you might be bound to snap a 10-game losing streak. However, we also saw the White Sox lose, 14 games in a row? Maybe Oakland's due for 3 more losses to make that 13 consecutive losses. But I do think this is a vitally important series coming off of the teams you just played. You cannot stoop down to the competition of your opponent. They are going to be playing in front of no fans, basically. They have never really fared well in Oakland. They have always seemingly struggled there for whatever reason, even good Royals teams. And I remember that when the Royals were good back in 14 and 15, 13 for that matter as well, Oakland was pretty good themselves. So that's kind of a moot point. This is much different. This is a Royals team that's coming off playing the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Mariners and Cleveland. They haven't seen a bad opponent in a long time. In fact, you'd have to go back to, before Memorial Day. I'm trying to go off the top of my head of a bad opponent, but I can't really think of one right now. Tampa, maybe, just because they're under 500, but they're not a bad team. They're still in playoff contention. They have not seen a bad baseball team in a while, and they're going to get a string of them here over the next few weeks. They're going to see the A's. They're going to see the Marlins. They're going to see the Rockies. They've got some bad opponents on deck here, and it is important. It is paramount that they capitalize, because 9 games over 500 is fine and dandy. But I think for the Royals to feel good about the All-Star break, they don't want to have to be constantly looking over their shoulder and feeling this pressure of you immediately got to turn things back on. The Royals are fortunate. They didn't move at all in the standings after this 20-game stretch, basically. They're still in second place, though they don't really have a 4 or 5 game lead anymore over Minnesota. They have a half-game lead. Boston at one point was 7 games out of a playoff spot. They've shrunk it down to 4 because of this last week. So there has been the tightening up, right? And that's going to happen over the course of 162. As I said, the Royals were never going to take a playoff spot and run away with it. You're hoping in August and September they can do that, but there was going to come a point in time in which the bad stretch of play, as all teams go through, is going to be an adverse moment. The adversity is going to be put right on your doorstep, and you're going to have to fight it off and then find a way to put yourself back in a really good spot. And the Royals have that opportunity these next few games and then also this coming weekend. Okay, so they will be in Arlington this weekend against a Rangers team that's incredibly banged up, not playing good baseball. I'll be out there for Friday's game, up in the air right now for Saturday, but I'll be out there on Friday to get the road experience watching the Kansas City Royals. And it's, I would argue, a better time to play Texas than Oakland, because I'm just an odds man. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, so it's kind of perfect to sneak that in. Losing 13 games in a row, pretty tough to do no matter how bad you are. Feels like at one point in time, something's going to break in your favor, and the Royals already swept Oakland. So to beat a team 6 times in a row, they did it to the White Sox earlier this year, but that was all the way back in April. Things have changed now a little bit, and I still feel good about the Royals not being laxed. They've got Cole Reagans and Seth Lugo. I would argue they have their 3 best throwing against the Oakland Athletics. The way Alec Marsh looked against the Yankees last Thursday, he goes tomorrow night. Then you get Reagans and you get Lugo. Bare minimum, as we all know, you got to take 2 of 3. But boy, it would feel good to have a sweep going into Arlington, a place kind of like Oakland, but I would say to a much larger scale. They never play well at. They never play well against the Rangers on the road. So to grab a sweep here, that's vitally important. I mean, if they can go 5-1 this week, I think you almost just snap back out of it and go, okay, 13 games over 500. You got the Marlins coming back to Kansas City, and then you have Cleveland to close out that week. Man, you take 2 of 3 from the Marlins, all of the sudden you're 14 games over 500, probably have a little bit more of a cushiony lead at the playoff spot, and then you can start chipping away again at the AL Central first place spot. The Royals are only 5 back, and Cleveland now is beginning their tough stretch of play. They're going to have some good opponents on deck, as well as Minnesota. Kansas City just went through theirs, their toughest stretch of the season. Now they've got some bad opponents on deck, but it's important you don't stoop low to that competition. We'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, the Royals sent some scouts to look at a division rival's bullpen arm. Do we think it's a good move, and what would the price be? We'll talk about that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can always find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Before we go any further, I want to tell you about a couple sponsors, but we're going to start it off with our title sponsor in FanDuel. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, which just concluded, and much, much more. And you can bet on it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP. Well, at least you could have bet on the Finals MVP, which ended up being Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics. Or you can bet on who's going to hit the next home run, maybe in tomorrow's game between the Royals and the A's. But visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Now, as I just said, the finals wrapped up. Hopefully you won some money on that. But if you want to win some money for tomorrow, maybe for one of the guys to snap out of a funk, Michael Garcia, 2 hits there, I maybe would throw a little bit of money down, but do so over at FanDuel. Now, keeping with the betting trend, I also want to tell you about Prize Picks, where you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds, and you just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stats projections, and you are locked in. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every week, from lowering select players' stats projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chance of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. And you can now win up to 100 times your money with baseball-only lineups on Prize Picks. If you submit a winning lineup featuring 4 demon squares, you'll cash in big time on the biggest moments of baseball's season. So here's what you need to do. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB, for a first deposit match of up to $100. Well, we are getting closer to July. And July means that we are going to see a lot more trades happening. For the first time in a long time here in Kansas City, those trades are going to go in a much different way. Whereas the last half decade, we have seen a lot of deadlines featuring the Royals being non-existent, or they're going to be sellers at the deadline. And this year, much different. The Royals are going to be buyers at the deadline. And even with this 7-12 stretch, I don't think the Royals in their front office are viewing the team any differently. I think they feel confident in the lineup. I think they feel like some of the guys are going to be bouncing back, but the bullpen does need help. Everybody knows the bullpen needs a little extra power. And I have talked about this countless times. I have been very vocal about it on Twitter. The Royals lack power. They lack swing and miss stuff. They lack the velocity. And I saw Eno Harris put out some stuff earlier tonight, I think it was. I want to make sure I get the teams right here and go on the fly. But the Royals bullpen had, or Eno Sarris, I said Eno Harris. I don't know why I said that. Close enough, as we know. But Eno Sarris put out the stuff plus on fastballs for bullpens around the league. The Royals are dead last. Cubs, who do not have a good bullpen, 28th. Diamondbacks, struggling bullpen, 29th. The Royals at 30th. And this is a perfect encapsulation, if you will, of what this bullpen represents. They rely on the soft contact. They rely on teams to bail them out instead of being able to give them the 98, 99, 100-mile-an-hour heat. And I would say smart heat, not just throwing it down the middle where it can get crushed, but having that swing and miss stuff on a 100-mile-an-hour fastball on the black or up in the zone or inside on the fist. We saw on Friday night, Will Smith, who's been very good over his last 15 outings, he leaves a slider in a good spot, and Freddie Freeman just pokes it out to the outfield, drives in the game-winning run. If Will Smith throws a little bit harder, that has more bite to it, more spin, maybe Freddie Freeman doesn't get as good of a swing on it or as good of contact. We've seen with Schreiber a few times this season that they're able to barrel him up a little bit more because it's only coming in at 89 to 90 to 91. And that's not really a knock on everybody in the bullpen, but they need that flamethrower. They need the guy in the 8th inning and the 9th inning that it's tough to catch up to him. And it already appears like the Royals are looking for a couple of guys. And J.J. Picollo mentioned that they were looking for those swing and miss back-end guys in the bullpen. And they've already sent some scouts to look at a division rivals closer in Michael Kopech, who I think this year has White Sox fans, I guess, up and down. Let's just call it as it is. It's been an up and down year for Michael Kopech. The numbers overall are not that great. His ERA is near 5, but he strikes out a lot of guys. He gets a lot of swing and miss. It's what you want in a back-end closer, but he's also been hit pretty hard. He's blown a number of saves, but it also goes back to the point of what do the Royals have to offer and what is the affordability of a guy like Michael Kopech? We've talked about Tanner Scott. Ursig, actually, we're going to see in Oakland. He's another guy. Austin Adams, another guy in Oakland. Mason Miller. Price is going to be too high. Ryan Helsley I was asked about, but I don't see the Cardinals being sellers at the deadline. There are some high-priced relievers out there, and I don't put Michael Kopech in that category. I put Michael Kopech in a category similar to where Scott Barlow was last year. A bad baseball team that has a reliever that has closer stuff, but maybe doesn't have the greatest numbers. And the Royals, they got Henry Williams in that deal, a 10 to 20 range prospect in the San Diego system, and then got a lottery ticket throw-in. That was what it cost to get Scott Barlow. And I think the Padres were more so trading for Scott Barlow of old, if you will, thinking he was going to bounce back. I would like to see Michael Kopech in a Royals uniform. One, because I don't think that the price is going to be that high. And I think the upside could be great for this Royals bullpen. I don't see him being a lights-out, unbelievable, unhittable reliever. I don't see that. But he's exactly the profile that we've been talking about. I'm not really too caught up in the ERA. The Royals closer right now, and James McArthur's ERA is north of 5. It's about bridging that gap to the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th inning guys. Okay, so you need to simplify it and know that when you have a 1-run lead in the 7th, 8th, or 9th, you know who you're going to. It's very HDH-esque, and I wonder if the Royals go out there and they get Michael Kopech, right? The Phillies also sent scouts to look at him, and I think the Yankees did as well. Maybe it was the Padres. Can't remember who that third team was. I know the Phillies were interested, and the Royals sent scouts and had been scouting him for a couple of weeks. So they're serious about going after Michael Kopech. Where it comes back to is what the White Sox are thinking. Do the White Sox want to trade in division? They've got a lot of Royals influence, and I got some flack and some pushback on, what trading in the division in baseball is really like and how much it should matter when you have a star player, a Luis Robert. I don't see them trading him to the Royals, but if it's Kopech, I see it in the same way when the Royals traded for Melky Cabrera back in 2017. He was on the White Sox, and the Royals gave him a couple of prospects. Hey, you make that deal because Michael Kopech ain't going to be around the next time you're competitive, and Melky Cabrera wasn't around the next time the White Sox were competitive, nor did they view him as that type of piece. So Kopech being a bullpen arm, they might try to capitalize on where just the value is. Now, the Royals don't have a great system, but neither do the other teams that are scouting him. So it just comes back to, do the White Sox try to stiff arm the Royals and say, we're not going to help you win this division. We're division rivals. We don't want to give you our closer, and we also don't like what your farm system's at. Or, could the Royals luck out where the Phillies and the Yankees and the Padres, they're selling low, going, well, he's not been that great of a closer for you, and we're not willing to move heaven and earth. We'll go after Tanner Scott. We'll go after Mason Miller. That's where you have to hope as a Royals fan is the unraveling, if you will, on the White Sox end, that they could be looking at Philly in New York and going, that makes sense for us. We really don't have to see him a lot, and we may not ever face him for the rest of the year. For the Royals, they might be able to capitalize on somebody like the Phillies or the Yankees going after Mason Miller and getting a deal done like that. The Royals could then go to the White Sox and say, well, it looks like you're out of suitors. We do want Michael Kopech, and we feel like we have the resources for that. And we could see it happen. When you have that Royals influence in there, it is possible, right? And relievers are different. Okay, like I said, a star player, hard to get a deal done in division. A reliever, when you're already 19-55 or whatever the White Sox are, it doesn't mean much. And Michael Kopech's not going to completely revamp the Royals bullpen, but I think it gives them a guy they just do not have. A guy they could turn to in the 8th or the 9th and say, get us 3 outs with your 99 to 100 mile an hour fastballs. It'd be interesting to see if some sort of deal is working out, because I said on Friday, in a Mailbag Friday, that I believe a move is going to be made between now and the All-Star break. That's my prediction. Just a gut feeling. I think the Royals will make a move over the next few weeks or so before everybody goes to Arlington and you get that week off. I think the Royals will make a move or two for the bullpen. Maybe it will be Michael Kopech. Maybe it'll be somebody else we're not even talking about. Okay, before we move on to our final segment, I want to let you know about Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When we come back, there's an offensive player and an outfielder at that John Heyman, one of the big-time baseball reporters, predicts will end up with the Royals. Who is that? We'll tell you who next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. And you can also find us on wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. A few more shout outs to our sponsors today, and we're going to kick it over to Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com. And order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Also want to tell you about one of our local sponsors in PXG Golf. If you haven't gone over there to get your fitting and mention us, do so this week. It's already getting warmer out there. You want to better your golf game, or maybe you want to get a better club that has you driving straighter, has you driving farther, and you can get all the data on it. Like I said, with my custom fitting, I got to see the swing speed on it. I got to see the distance, the spin rate, all those baseball terms, they work for golf as well. And you can find out all that information at PXG Golf. They made me a believer, and they'll do the same for every golfer in Kansas City. Visit pxg.com/LockedOnRoyals to schedule your fitting at PXG Kansas City, 7517 West 119th Street in Overland Park. Get fitted for any club, and you'll get a dozen free golf balls. That's pxg.com/LockedOnRoyals to schedule your fitting. pxg.com/LockedOnRoyals. The limit is 1 dozen golf balls per person. This promotion ends on June 30th. The other terms and conditions may apply, but you can see their store for details. On the topic of trades and getting into the nitty-gritty of it, because I know for a lot of people out there, I saw it on Mailbag Friday, targets that I would like to see the Royals go after, what I think is the most logical thing to do. I will stand, pretty firm on the idea that the Royals are going to make moves for the bullpen, and they might be gauging the water for the outfield. And what it's going to come down to with the outfield piece, a bat for that matter, is how deep into the system and the number of prospects the Royals would give up. I think they have set their limit as to who's going to be untouchable, even if the Royals don't have a top system in the eyes of who's trading with them. I think they've set their boundaries as who's not going to be traded in a year like this, because the Royals are not going to be going all in. If you're somebody out there that thinks the Royals are going to sell the farm to go all in for a playoff chase, it's just not the case. I think they want to define what this system is and continue to bolster it and not just strip away all the parts for a iffy playoff run. I mean, of course, the goal is to get into the playoffs, but I think that right now is what they are identifying. They are identifying guys that can help them get in. It's not guys that can help them win a World Series. Back in 2013 and 14, which is what I think you can expect a little bit more from this Royals team. The 2013 and 2014 Royals did not make moves, and I'm not including the James Shields trade. That was in the offseason. I'm meaning purely deadline moves. The 2013 Royals really didn't bring in anybody. I know they had Emilio Bonifacio at one point. They had Justin Maxwell at one point. There just wasn't any moves that really changed things around. 2014, remember they go after Josh Willingham. That was after the deadline. They had made moves to give them that extra push to get into the playoffs. 2013 didn't work. 2014, it did. 2015 was the moves to help them win a World Series. Ben Zobrist, Johnny Cueto, those guys were brought in to help them win a World Series. I just don't know if I see the Royals going after guys that are seen as, it's our World Series golden goose here. They don't have the resources for that. So what they're going to try to do is piece together trades that can get them over the finish line. And then you see what happens in the playoffs. Now, to the point of this topic, because you're wondering, well, who the hell are you talking about that John Heyman predicts will go to the Royals? Well, to sum it up shortly, he predicts Taylor Ward to go to the Royals, the Angels outfielder having a pretty decent year. And I could see the fit. He kind of reminds me of a Royal in general. And I think that he would be an upgrade in the outfield. Do I think the ceiling is tremendous? I do not. I do not see Taylor Ward transforming this outfield. I think it makes it better, but also at what cost? Okay, because that has to be a factor here. For some folks out there, some fans, you look at the Royals right now and you say, I don't really care about the system. Right? I don't care who they trade. Right? You didn't really care about David Sandlin when they acquired John Schreiber, is that they got a major league piece. That's the type of move, though, I see the Royals making in the next few weeks. A John Schreiber for David Sandlin type of deal. I don't really see it being 3 prospects for an outfield bat. And I also bring up this point. Hunter Renfroe is going to be coming back here in a week or two. It was not a fracture on his foot, as we know, or a fracture on his toe. It was just a bone bruise. Now, it may have thrown off his timing. It'll be a little bit tougher to get back in the swing of things, but he was hitting well. Kyle Isbell, before the Dodgers series, was hitting near 230, and MJ Melendez had a pretty good last week. So maybe the outfield's not going to be as glaring of an issue as we once thought it would be. It's just 1 week, just a couple of weeks, or it's just a month for a lot of people. But I have also just convinced myself the bullpen is what needs to be fixed. It's the easiest to fix, and it's the most affordable to fix. The outfield, you go out there and get a piece. The big question becomes, does Taylor Ward take this team to the next level? Does Joe Adell take this team to the next level? It's a question the Royals front office is going to have to be answering themselves. Or is the better question being asked, what does an average bullpen get us to? Or slightly above average? What does an arm or two do for this bullpen? Does it take us from 88 wins to 94, 95? All of those things are going to be circulating throughout the front office over the next couple of weeks. Maybe it's Michael Kopech. Maybe it's Taylor Ward. Can't wait to find out, though. Okay, that'll do it for another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Again, you can always find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. One last shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. Tomorrow, we're going to preview this upcoming Oakland series, go over Alec Marsh a little bit, and maybe some more trade rumors that may be going around in Major League Baseball. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.